second follow-ups, and warm calls. Those are two different things. Because when you call somebody, the chances are you catch them and they're ready to talk and make moves right then and there is slim. So there's always a hit and go.
Okay.
The first contact and first or second follow-up. Pre-appointment first or second follow-up. And then the warm follow-ups. Those two categories of follow-ups are not included with that new contact.
Okay. So how many hours of calling, both sourcing cold leads and then following up on those cold leads to convert those into appointments in future days?
I don't source cold leads. That's out,
So you're just following up on the leads that the cold callers are sourcing?
Oh, you mean, so, okay, no, I'm not generating a list. Okay, I'm not generating a list, but no, I am cold calling.
Okay. Yeah, so you're cold calling 20 hours, and then you're also following up on the leads that you generated by cold calling, right?
Yes.
And how many additional hours are you following up on those leads?
That's probably an additional 10, 15 hours a week.
Okay, so you're calling almost 30, 35 hours a week.
On the phone, easy.
Yeah, okay.
Not to mention sporadic, just being on the phones.
Right.
Call
right.
you.
And that and voicemail blasts are your two top ways you're getting deals right now?
2018.
Right, and just like now, with this year or whatever.
The second half.
Uh-huh.
Direct mail was still doing really good the first and second quarter this year.
Okay. But so now currently those are the two best?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the deal, that's why and so is cold calling fun?
It depends on where your head is, yeah. It can be, yeah.
Can it be fun sometimes?
Yeah.
And can it suck ass sometimes?
Absolutely.
Okay. And when it sucks ass, what do you do to make yourself call anyways?
I have a regimen. I have some mind tools and some books, a combination from YouTube videos and a few books. So I'm sorry, I'm not getting too big, too deep. Okay. So there's a book.
I think this is good, right?
Yeah.
There's a book.
So Phil's been working with me for 2 or 3 years, and he's going through his top ways that he's finding deals, which is cold calling and voicemail blasts. And then I'm saying when you don't want to call, because he's calling 35 hours a week.
Oh wow.
How do you make yourself call?
So it's a combination of YouTube videos and book literature. The book literature are like real good mind science books. Books like Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil.
Oh man, that's a great
Books like As a Man Thinketh. Just books that really sober you up to what's really going on versus your feelings that would distract you, make you think that nothing constructive can come out of cold calling.
So would you say that when you're feeling unmotivated, you focus on your goal and what you're trying to achieve?
My why, time freedom.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty much.
Yeah.
That's pretty much that's the real currency, right? Time. That's enough right there.
Okay, so that's good. And so when we first started working together, were you doing this full time, or did you have a job?
I had a job. Oh, this is a full-out interview. Wow. Okay.
It's just kind of going that way. I'm making this shit up as I go along, but I think it'd be good for them to hear. So
Good job.
You had a job.
Yeah.
And how many hours a week were you working in your job? It was like full time.
I was working 8 to 10 hours. A lot of travel throughout the country.
8 to 10 hours a day or a week?
A day.
Okay, so right, so
On
it was normally full time.
yeah.
Okay, all right. And how long were you doing this part time before you could go full time? So when we first got together at that coffee shop, remember that corner bakery, whatever it was?
No, that was. Oh yeah, it was the first time we
Yeah,
actually met.
and that was when I still lived. So I moved into my new house in like August.
How did you get your new house, John?
Right, we can talk about that too.
Okay, all right.
In August of August 2.5 years ago now, basically. And this is before that, so I think it was like 3.5 actually years ago. I think it was longer than you're thinking.
Wow.
I think, because I've been there like 2.5 years in the new house.
Then I'm wrong then.
I think. So whatever, 2.5, 3 years, whatever it was, right? And so how long were you, it was still at your job while you were doing this part-time?
How many years was I doing it with the job?
Yeah, like how long, or months or whatever it was, I forget. Before you could go full-time?
Maybe half of that time. It's
Okay.
only been 1.5 years now, full time.
Okay. And how were you able to go full-time in real estate?
Pipeline, building a pipeline. That's it. Literally just hammering the phones.
Mhm.
It was just great timing. It was the direct mail deals were just really thick in the pipeline. I think we had maybe 3 or 4 rehabs in queue. Maybe 2 or 3 wholesales in queue. We closed a few deals early that year. The timing was just good. The pipeline was full, and I couldn't justify the time in the full-time job. It just didn't make any sense.
Yep. And so in 1.5 years, you went from doing a part-time to doing a full, from basically not really doing it at all. I mean, you had some rental properties of your own, when you first started, so you knew some stuff about real estate, but from going but basically you hadn't done any real estate investing, short-term stuff like what we do, wholesaling or rehabbing.
No,
I
everything.
remember you did one rehab or something that didn't go very well, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it defined going well.
Did you make any money?
No, my
Okay.
investors did though. My private lenders did.
Okay. So it was like so it was you did a rehab.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And so
Lost like 60 grand.
okay, I lost 60 grand, right?
Yeah.
And then we started working together, and then a year and a half later, you were full time.
Yep.
Right. Okay. What was like the biggest deal? What's the biggest fee that you've made? The biggest like total profit, like both what both of us made?
Yeah, we I cold call a foreclosure for a house in a 2001 zip code, Northwest DC, a few blocks from the Shaw Howard train station. And I got under contract for maybe 170, no 120, 130, something like that. And the ARV for the house conservatively was maybe around the mid 700s. And I got under contract. The seller was just, and she was, she was just very, very difficult to deal with. I mean, she was just a lot going on in her life, financial distress, circumstantial distress. It was a mess. It took us about 30 days to close the deal. We wound up giving her some more cash just because I just thought it was so much meat on the bone that I couldn't just do it. I wanted to give her more, so we gave her, I think, maybe around 170, 180, and I wholesaled it to you for a $200K wholesale fee. No, we did double close. We did a double close. Yeah, we did a double close, and I made $200K. And John purchased his new row home in the middle of DC.
That's what I live in. That's what I live in now.
50%.
That's
It
cool.
was a
Yeah.
pretty
Sweet.
And so I got a house, and you made
$200K.
$200,000 on one.
Question: was the house already in foreclosure or was it in pre-foreclosure?
I don't know.
Or what?
I should probably look that up in the records to see exactly where. It was in a foreclosure list. I think it was Citricado. That's when Citricado, that vendor, got my attention. It was a Citricado.
Then if it was Citricado, then it was notice of default.
Yeah, then
So
it
that
was
means that there's a notice that you've defaulted, and we're going to auction your property off
Pre-foreclosure.
It was pre-foreclosure.
in like
Okay.
30. So she was at the very, very, very last stage,
Yeah.
about to lose the house.
So we can still approach pre-foreclosures. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean those are good ones.
Okay.
Those are very good ones.
But we don't have the same like commission amounts as that. Like we'd never make that much.
That's right. That's right. But
not
if
a
you got a
story for
300K
us.
deal as an agent, then yeah, we would definitely give you a lot more. Yeah. So that's that.
That's that.
So yeah, so maybe we can have Phil be our little guest star from time to time.
That's crazy.
Can you expand a little bit about you said like mind tools or what have you when you're cold calling? Can you like explain what you mean?
Well, there's a feelings component, and then there's a practical component. And our feelings, let me speak for Philip. My feelings would tell me, don't do this shit. It's not going to make any sense. You're obsessing over it. It's not worth it. Nothing's going to happen. Cold calling's not going to work. The investment shit's not going to work. I feel like this is just temporary. All this shit is going to come down crashing. I mean, that's just our feelings and our mind tells me that. And fundamentally, just from I'm not a scientist, but I'm a logical guy by default. It's becoming easier for me to kind of recognize those emotions and those feelings and know that they're just fake and unreal. So when I hear my mind or my feelings allowing those thoughts to surface, it's time to grab some tools and revisit why, time freedom.
And so what tools would you do, or what videos or whatever? Do you have the same ones you go to over and over, or do you buy new ones?
Same ones
so
over
give
and
me some
over.
other examples, right? So I mean, you did
Yeah.
the Napoleon Hill one,
What is that? Oh, yeah.
the Think of a Rich one. You did Outwitting the Devil.
So those two books are major, and just picking up those books are really mind-jacking. And then there's Eric Thomas. I'm not a huge fan of Eric Thomas, but he's a I think he's a beast just on the limited amount of material that I really, you know, he has like 4 or 5 videos.
Yeah.
One video is called UOU. Eric Thomas, UOU. It's pretty aggressive. And I think I need that aggressive in your face, so he does that. There's another one called I Made My Mark.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I like E.T.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually listen to E.T. every morning. I like the one with you heard the one with him and Inky Johnson?
I haven't.
Yeah, that's a really good one too.
Yeah, he's good. There's another one called I Made My Mark. Sink or Swim. Sink or Swim is a really good one. So those 3 videos.
And so will you watch these multiple times?
Yes.
And if you feel unmotivated, do you watch them?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you watch them like every day before you call, or just when you need them?
You know what? It depends. There's cycles to this thing, John. It depends. Sometimes I'm in a mode where I am watching them every day. Okay. Because I'm seeing that my programming and my consistency might be wavering outside my margin.
Yeah. And there's periods when you'll feel more motivated and periods when you'll feel less motivated. And it might not be just a day. I mean, it might be a while. You know, everything goes in sort of waves and cycles with just being a person. So yeah, I mean, you might have stretches where you don't feel that motivated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm feeding myself, I'm like really force feeding those videos.
Okay. So you're proactively trying to counteract the way you feel by consuming like content that you know is gonna try to motivate you to get past that stuff.
Absolutely. It's all feelings.
So that's about being intentional about what you're watching and listening to, and only feeding yourself the stuff that's gonna like basically kind of support what you're trying to do. You know, that's why I like listening to news and like I don't listen to any news or watch any news or any of that kind of stuff or anything that doesn't make you feel good or feel positive and happy. You just don't have to watch any of that stuff or listen to it, and then you can just choose to do like positive, motivating things. And the more you do that, you just basically brainwash yourself.
Basically,
you're your own cult leader.
Yeah.
And you decide what you're gonna brainwash yourself with and for what purpose, and then you just start brainwashing yourself.
So what advice would you give? Excuse me, did anybody else have any questions? What advice would you give to somebody in our position, just coming in, may have educated themselves about wholesaling or may have educated themselves about real estate? Really, this is kind of like their ground floor opportunity. What would you say to somebody to be successful in a role such as this?
I would advise, and I know this is a mixed room of agents and investors.
It's a mix, but everybody can do cash deals and cold calling and stuff, but it'll be different. Like some might be more focused on trying to get listings, but they can still do cash deals for us too. And then these guys are just hunter cash, basically, where they're just focusing on cash appointments pretty much. They'll get some listing ones too.
Okay. I would say get out of the real estate business. There's enough competition. And, just work at Burlington Co-Factor. But no, seriously, for me, I think the most beneficial thing for me, I think in the last 24 months is I've been doing this whole self-deep dive thing, right? With this emotional intelligence and really being able to gauge exactly where I am just as a human, as a man, where are my feelings? And then making sure I address those feelings with whatever I need to address them with. And this is, I have a wife and 3 boys, and so this actually helps me become a better husband. You know what I mean? So it's not so much as about the real estate component as it is about I sound like one of those people that talk self-development. I hate that word, but it's true. Like I had to learn the emotional intelligence dialing in really helps me really rebuild myself. And that component, knowing where I am and that self-awareness and that emotional intelligence allows me to navigate and really just kind of be disciplined and go at whatever I need. The next barrier in real estate, which is, it's going to probably, synonymous with the next barrier on a home front, whether it's, taking out the trash on time or.
Sure. So, what would you say is your bread and butter in terms of hook and reel with deals? Like, I know we said that you got that particular listing from, pre-foreclosure, but what would you say has been really kind of like your bread and butter in terms of finding deals?
I think we're in a foreclosure season, a pre-foreclosure moment right now. I think most of our deals have come from pre-foreclosure moment. So I'm doing my analytics this week actually. I'm kind of looking at our deal dashboard.
And you're hopping on the list when they're fresh, I've noticed too, right?
Absolutely.
Like when we're pulling the new foreclosures and notices of default, you're basically trying to close people immediately.
Well, we're pulling them weekly now. When are you pulling them?
I only pull them every 2 weeks probably. I mean, I haven't been hopping on them as fast as you have.
Okay. We're pulling them weekly, and they're usually getting within the first week that the bank files a notice of default. We're usually touching them about 2 or 3 times that first week. They're getting
So you're doing
touched.
voicemail blasts, you're
Yeah.
cold calling them.
And then
That's
I'm
good.
cold
That's
calling
smart.
them.
Smart.
And I mean,
So and these are the most motivated of the motivated of the
Yeah,
motivated at
yeah.
that point, right? They just got the notice like, oh shit, this is
Yeah.
real. I'm gonna lose the house. And then
Yeah.
right at that time, they get the call, hey, do you want to sell it? And they're like, well, I don't want to sell it, but fuck, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. Now we're in the beginning of we're trying something new. This whole weekly and attack them is only, what are we in October? Maybe a month and a half old. We started this at the end of the 3rd quarter. We're really trying to frame up and see what needs to happen in 2019 to get our deal flow up to a certain threshold. And so we're attacking these notice of defaults and these liens that are filed every week. Neil was a lien. That Neil was a lien. And so, I mean, we're seeing if that works. But right now, I think the pre-foreclosures and the liens are it. We're also exploring some estate stuff and doing some stacking. So we're looking at all the driving for dollars lists that we're pulling and the pre-foreclosure lists. And we're looking at the owners of those and see how many of those say estate. Now we know that only represents a fraction of the
In the tax record, they say estate.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It only
I've
represents
seen that a couple times.
Yeah.
There's gonna be multiple signs of distress, like what
Yeah.
we've talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Right, so one sign of distress would be they have this lien filed on them,
Exactly.
that's why they're listed in the first place. Then you look at the tax record, they're also in an estate. That's a second sign of distress potentially that has been inherited. If you look it up on Google Maps, it looks like shit. That'd be a third sign of distress, right? So that one would be worth more digging into to try to contact to see if the owner is still alive or not. Sometimes they might not be, who the heirs are, and then aggressively contacting the heirs through like all the channels, Facebook, text message, calling. Those are the ones that are more worth your time. That's more the snipering.
Yeah.
The blanket calling is good too, but the afternoons, that's when you can do more sniper kind of stuff.
Yeah, I ran into one like that yesterday. I was joking, but I think that I'm going to try to help this guy out and try to figure out how we can do it, because basically there was a property in DC that his father owned. Father died, left it to sister. Sister lives in Georgia. She never deeded the property to herself in DC. Sister dies. Now everybody, mother, brother, sister, cousin wants equitable rights to the property, but nobody has it. So I was on the phone with him, and I mean, I pretty much developed a pretty good rapport with him, got his phone number, but was just trying to figure out, I'm glad we had this conversation, to try to figure out how could I go about, trying to assist him or maybe turning that into a possible deal.
When was the last time you talked to him?
Yesterday.
Why haven't you met with him?
Well, he was kind of standoffish a little bit, so that was really kind of like my only thing. I didn't want to push too much, but I wanted to speak to him in a way that he could see that I'm not so much trying to take your property, but I'm more or less trying to help you out,
Yeah.
With this particular situation. So
There's a nurturing way to push the envelope. I'm still learning it, but
yeah,
You want to push them to get an in-person meeting and turn it viable.
absolutely.
so and here's the thing. So we have, there's a network of lawyers and title companies and people that can glue all of these components together in scenarios like that. So if you have somebody that's willing to take the point position on rolling an estate, you want to meet with them, get them under contract, even though it wouldn't be a legal contract, but it's a step forward in their mind. And we take that purchase agreement, take it to one of our lawyers, Brian, who I've been using recently. Hey Brian, this person, we got him under contract, Brian, we know that this is not enforceable, but this person is ready to open up an estate. And we're just kind of, we'll think through what needs to happen with Brian to get that person from where they are, willing to move forward with their transaction to actually being the executive of the estate. What you don't want to do is let something like that float around in thin air, because one of the big boys will grab them up and think through and solve this problem.
Okay.
And then you'll see it being re-advertised as a wholesale deal.
Yeah.
So they don't have to decide who is actually going to be, since they obviously don't know who is the owner of the property. I thought that they have to come to like court or whatever to figure out who actually is going to own the house, since there's nobody technically
Well, that's what probate.
Probate is for.
That's what probate's
Probate
for.
is
That's
for.
what
Yeah.
Are we talking before that or after that, I guess?
What?
This conversation.
Before.
Okay.
See, probate.
Yeah.
I mean, probate is, hey, the owner is not with us anymore.
Right, we
Who's going to
decide,
become the new
yeah.
owner? And it's open to anybody. He can open up an estate. You know what I mean? And it may get denied or declined or rejected, but anybody can do that.
So we can still set an appointment with these
Get in
people,
front of
even
them.
though they haven't decided through probate?
Well, so yeah, so it will depend on the situation, basically, because in this case, right, there's other people who are heirs, and they may not all be on the same. So they're not on the same page on what they
Yeah.
want to do.
Yeah, they're not.
So you just have to bring that basically to us, and then we'll have to figure out if it's worth meeting with them or not. I mean, sometimes it might not be, like if, because it could be that the one heir wants, or half the heirs want retail value for it, and they're just not going to let it sell at a price that's going to make sense for us.
Sure.
That's a lot of times what's going to be the case if there are a lot of heirs. So it's going to kind of depend on the situation.
Of course. I mean, before I brought it to you guys, I really wanted to kind of really get it together, because I mean, he didn't even all the way sound like he knew what he could do, and he said, well, I never really thought about selling it. We're still kind of going for probate and everything like that, but
Okay.
I kind of thought that this could be a way to possibly get my hands wet, get my feet wet, just in terms of trying to help somebody out to ultimately produce a deal out of something that was so rough and rigid.
Yeah, I mean, I would ask what his siblings, like, what they're, do all of you want to sell it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very hard if you're in a meeting and you don't have all the decision makers there.
Yeah.
And we had one like that a week or two ago, met with at Target one.
Which one?
How many, when I met him at the
Starbucks.
Starbucks.
Oh.
Yeah.
Start talking. Sorry.
So we had 2 of the 3 decision makers there, and it's almost impossible to get that on the spot, because they just, unless the other party is really like 100% deferential to what the other 2 are going to do, which is rarely the case. It's very hard to get those when you don't have all the parties there. But what I would tell you though, Kevin, and something that everybody should feel comfortable doing when you're scheduling a cash appointment, if it's a more complex situation, you should feel free to reference the fact that the person who's going to be coming out is an attorney. And that, I know that Andrew's done that before successfully. You want to be careful not to suggest that I'm going to be their attorney,
Yeah.
but you can say that he's also an attorney, so he has experience with this type of thing.
Gotcha.
Something like that. And that can be, that can change people's perspective
Yeah.
on whether they feel like they're going to get more value out of the meeting.
Sure.
That's a huge. We talked about that last week, didn't we? That's a huge competitive advantage that no other acquisitions person is going to have when they sit in front of that seller. That's very important.
And so, Berta, on the how many cash appointments on average, especially when you were calling just alone, not when you had people who were calling for you, how many cash appointments on average a week? Like, what was your goal? How many cash appointments per week?
It was, I want to say, like 6 or 7.
Uh-huh.
6 or 7.
Okay.
Several months ago. For a while now, the goal has been 10 a week. Now we're shooting for 20 a week. My goal is to overwhelm Kevin so much that he needs a replacement. I think that's a good indicator that
A replacement.
help or replacement.
So when you were just calling on your own, though, what was your goal was 6 or 7?
6 or 7 a week.
And what would you typically do? How many would you typically get on average, would you guess?
Maybe 3 or 4.
3 or 4 a week.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many hours of calling?
I don't know. I gotta look back at how many hours I was
Just
calling
guess,
during
like,
that time.
yeah, just, yeah.
I'm gonna say it was probably maybe 15-ish.
Yeah, because you were doing
For
appointments.
cold.
You were doing
Yeah,
appointments at
yeah,
that time. Yeah,
it was,
so
it was
okay.
15-ish.
So 15 hours a week, and you were getting 3 or 4 appointments cash appointments a week consistently.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's probably good.
You know what? Those appointments are meshed with direct mail. 'Cause I was, I was doing.
Okay, how many do you think were just cold calling?
Maybe 2.
Okay. 15 or 20 hours, 2 appointments. So 10 hours for 1 cash appointment.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
probably sounds like about
The
right.
metrics I
You can
sent
get
out,
more
yeah,
appointments
yeah,
than that with
absolutely.
the listing stuff. Like it should be 3 or 4 hours at the most to get an appointment. Most of those are going to be listing now, but for a cash appointment, it's going to be more total hours. Like probably like that 10-ish is probably
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
8 to 14, something like that.
Yeah.
Hours. Okay.
I just don't have a real clear grasp on where I was investment wise, investing hours on cold calling versus in the field, because for a while I was tuggling with managing those time blocks.
But he was having to do both. You know, he was sourcing the appointments the way that you guys are, but then he was also going out and actually doing the appointments with the sellers.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's a lot of time. And so now he actually found it's been better, I guess, right? Or to just focus on sourcing appointments. And he's got virtual assistants and stuff helping him now with calling, and then have Kevin, you know, go on the appointments and close the deals, because he's not distracted by actually meeting with the sellers. He's just sourcing the deals and then we're closing them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can you walk me through like your call structure? Like what do your calls sound like what's your approach over the phone for cold leads?
Yeah. Hey, this is Phil. I was calling about your house here on 123 Main Street. Kevin. This is where you come and say yes.
Yes.
I know this call is it's weird. It's completely out of the blue, but you know, my wife and I, we were looking to buy another property in the area, and I just thought I'd reach out and introduce myself and see if you guys ever considered selling.
No.
I don't blame you. The price is only going up. I tell you what, you know, is it okay if I just, you know, text you my contact information maybe sometime down the road? You might want to have just the honest, you know, conversation about, you know, what would make sense for a fair offer for you.
Oh, who are you again?
Phil Edwards. My wife and I, we own a small investment firm here in DC. You know what? I'm sorry. I mean, the last thing I want to do is be the big bad developer trying to lowball you. I mean, if you never consider selling, I totally get it. I can just throw your number away. I completely understand. And that's usually when I get cut off. And they say, oh, no, it's okay, I understand. Or they say, okay, you never call me again.
Right.
And so it's...
All right, and then what if you do your initial intro. So do your initial intro again, if you don't mind, just when you're the first thing you tell them.
Hey, this is Phil. And I was calling about your house here on 123 Main Street.
What do you want?
You know what? This I hate telemarketers too. Listen. My wife and I, we were you know, looking to buy another property in the area. I just thought I'd reach out and see if you guys ever considered selling.
For the right price?
Obviously, I get it. Obviously, price is important to you. I tell you what, these conversations only take about 3 or 4 minutes or so, and I can give you a clear yes or no, and if we're even interested in taking the next steps.
Well, listen, I'm on my way into the dentist. What's your offer?
You know what? Let me do this. You're going to the dentist. You're getting your teeth fixed. I'll text you my contact information. Give me a call back when you have a chance to chat. It'll only take a few minutes, and we can have that honest conversation and see what works for you.
Hey, listen, you know what? I got 45 seconds now. Just tell me your offer.
You know what? This probably isn't a good time. I'll text you my number, my contact info. I don't want to be intrusive. I know I need some time before I go to the dentist. Just give me a chat when you get a chance a little later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, good. So, very casual, very informal, very friendly. A lot of and you do the laughing and all that stuff.
I do.
That's very good, very disarming. Izzy is doing that, a lot of that too, especially at the beginning. So if you can conjure that up, consistently, I think it's very effective.
Especially like on the what do you want? Why are you calling?
Right, and then being able to just kind of laugh, and not get defensive.
Yeah.
Like empathize with them. Like, yeah, I understand this is sort of such a strange thing. I kind of wonder what this person wants from me, and try to shoot them off the phone as fast as I could too.
Yeah.
Or whatever, however you're gonna say the things. If you can laugh and stuff and be
Yeah.
personable, definitely better.
Yeah.
How after a year
Put
do
your
you
hand up.
keep at the beginning? I get you can do the laughing and everything, but after a year and a half of doing it, how do you get yourself to do it and not just want to?
Time freedom and my bank account.
Okay.
No, I'm not meaning to be funny, but you know, I mean, I'm able to support my family, wife, and 3 kids by laughing on the phone at myself. And a lot of the spacing and the laughing, all of these things are by design. I literally used to take my phone and record myself just to, and I have my team leaders too when they're new with us. I go through certain sections of the script and I have them recorded 30 and 40 times until they're sick of it, until they can hear their own selves in the script in their head. And if you aren't sick of your script, it's probably because it isn't internalized. You don't know it good enough yet. And all of that is by design. Like I'm very socially awkward. You know, I really want to have good jokes. I listen to Kevin's recordings just to find good jokes and good material.
That must be tough.
See, you see how you just flow. You see, and so like I'm not good. I'm not that good. I'm very antisocial, not on purpose. That's just my personality. So I'm literally still learning how to put space and be natural and be the investor next door, because all of our competitors they're hiring VAs to do this that they don't have the ability to, to connect. And so that's literally a major focus. So all that spacing, all that laughing, all of that stuff is by design. And I keep doing it because it's literally creating the kind of life for myself and wow, I sound just like everybody else on those podcasts. It's crazy. But it's literally creating that kind of life that me and the wifey wants, and it's worth it.
Right, and that was good too, technique-wise. You mentioned him and his wife up front are looking for a house. That's why we say the whole thing about like we owned a house nearby. I was on the way to it. I happened to see yours. I know this is kind of strange just to call someone out of the blue, but you want to make it seem like as personal as one specific house you're calling because you want that one house, even though you're making 100 calls.
So when you do get a yes, we're interested in selling, but what's your line of questioning that you go through, like the body of the call?
Yeah.
I notice that it gets a little stale when I'm on the phone because I don't know exactly what to ask or what information to gather. Like I've got an idea, like an outline, but I started to find myself kind of like checking the box on a question as opposed to having a dialogue about what's really going on with them.
Wow, I struggle with that for a very, very, very long time. So so after the greeting, I set the expectations. I went into the expectations. I kind of jumped to some objections when Kevin was role playing. John allowed me to go directly to the next expectations part. Hey, phone call is gonna take just a few minutes for me to even see if it's worth our time. And then I go to a contact information where I'm getting the best number to text them, and their email address. And then after that, we're going to the detailed information about the actual property. And that's where we're weaving some of the life circumstance and a lot of the core of the rapport building. We're doing a little bit of rapport in the beginning with the greeting and the setting expectations and the contact information. But when we're talking about the house that's very connected to their life, that's the problem. With the distresses, that's where a lot of the rapport building is. So we're interweaving, wow, this is a great house. So I struggle with the checkbox item too. So there are a list of questions: bedrooms, baths, basements, walkout, renovations within the last 7 to 10 years. So all of those things are important, and those will be listed in front of you, and I can send you what we use. But more importantly, the whole script has to feel like they're talking to their neighbor, like they're talking to their friend. And so that's where a lot of the spacing, and that's where a lot of the laughing, and that's where a lot of the intentional connecting comes in for me. So I really had to do some deep diving. Philip struggled with cutting people off all the time, and being too eager, and being distracted in the conversations by the response versus listening and processing their response and figuring out and trying to understand, why would somebody say that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, that's going to be an Izzy thing. For you to really sit down, okay, listen to your phone calls. What am I struggling with? I'm struggling with how to make this thing feel natural, feel like a conversation. We'll dive a little deeper. Izzy, what are you doing in a conversation? When you talk to your girlfriend, one of your boys, how do you sound? Well, not your girlfriend, because you probably want something from her. Or your boyfriend. I know things all over the place these days. But the point I'm trying to make is that, I know the point is I'm going to make that you want to think about how to make it as natural and as comfortable as possible. And that's a real weak point for me that I have to constantly keep
Do you have like a go-to like first question? I noticed that Andrew goes to. Can you tell me a little bit about the house, bedrooms, bathrooms, any renovations over the last few years? Like, I guess how does that structure go in your head, or does it depend on the conversation?
You mean when someone says, yes, I want to sell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So,
after
if someone
we go-
says,
yeah.
I want to sell.
Yeah,
Yes, I
after-
do want to sell, Phil.
And so after they say they want to sell, we go to the setting expectations. How long is this phone call going to talk? I say, hey, you know what? Awesome. Listen, it's only going to take a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, learn a little bit about the property. They say, sure. Then I say, hey, before we dive into the details, is this the best number to send my contact information to? And they say, yes. So I get the number and I use them on call reel at this point. And so I text them my information. I say, hey, while I'm texting them, I say, hey, I realize anybody can just call you and say that they buy houses. This way you can look up my information, check Better Business Bureau ratings, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like small talk. I'm kind of mumbling, but I'm clear. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. All of it is by design, but it's just kind of floated out there. Just kind of, hey, this is, I'm just texting my information. Anybody can say that they claim they buy houses, all these schemes on here these days. So I'm mumbling that while I'm talking.
Like diffusing that up front.
Exactly.
Because that's what they're
Exactly.
thinking.
So I send them a text message. And then right after that, I use that very go-to bantering statement. Hey, so let's go ahead and dive into the details. Tell me a little bit about the property. And I make it real announced. It's pronounced, and there's a deep breath there, and it feels like a transition. Now we're about to start talking about this property. Now he's about to decide whether or not he's really interested in buying. He called me about the property, but he might tell me yes or no. I gotta perform. I gotta show up. And so that's what we're trying to provoke. They're engaged at that point, because now that he's considering buying my property, I'm having a conversation. We're diving into the details.
Right.
Almost like, is there like a power shift there? Like now you're pre-qualifying his property. Like,
That's what the expectations did.
right. Like you're deciding now if you want
Correct.
to buy,
Mhm.
as opposed to him deciding if he wants to sell.
When
If
get to that-
you
yeah.
can get them to feel that shift on the call, it's definitely more powerful.
Yeah, and what Phil said earlier in the scripting about it'll only take 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'll be able to give you a yes or no.
A
as to
clear yes
whether
or no.
Right.
We're interested. I think is.
That's good. That's a good thing. That's a good thing to throw in there as well.
Now you got to be careful when I can sense there's a motivating tone or with a laid back personality. I don't go with the clear yes or no. I go with something a little more nurturing. I'd say, and I'm still learning how to really write this in the script. There's a line for neutral or resistance. That's what the clear yes or no is for. Then another time if there's already some signs of distress, or they're just low key and very laid back, I'd say, hey, let's these phone calls only take 3 or 4 minutes or so, and if it makes sense, we can take the next steps. And if not, that's okay too. At least we gave it our best shot. So that's the more nurturing, laid back response that I'm getting. But for the person that's a little aggressive, a little cold or neutral, indifferent, what do you want? What's your offer? It depends on the price. I can give you a clear yes or no. Because then I need to neutralize that. You want my house, you called me, you need me, and I want them to know, I don't need you. I just thought I'd just reach out to you to see if there was a possibility of us working together. You know what I mean? So that's
You're good.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
No. But keep asking questions. Yeah.
So what's the ask on the tail end of the call, depending on, how do you ask for the appointment the best way? Do you sidestep that, or do you take a direct approach?
So after we
Do
talk
you give
about
numbers on
yeah.
the spot too?
After we talk about the property, while we're talking about the details of the property, we're always gradually going into what the situation is with the property. It's always going to come out if there's any physical, financial, or circumstantial distress with the property. It's usually always going to come out. If it's a divorce, if it's been vacant, if somebody's renting it and not paying the rent, if they are, a part-time landlord, just trying to hold on to it, if they're struggling, all that stuff is going to come out. And so if it's a qualified lead, by our definition, I say, what, it might make sense for us to come out here and take a look at the property and put an offer in your hand. And so that's literally what I would say.
Right. Well, can't you just tell me over the phone?
If they say that?
Yeah.
You know what, I mean, usually we need to see a property before we make an offer. It sounds like you got a clear idea on what you want. How much do you think the property's worth? But typically, if somebody responds like that, their motivation is not sufficient or warrants us coming out. So at that point, I'm shifting. I say, you know what, the last thing I want to do is come out and waste your time. You know, we typically buy properties that need a little fixing up. You know, it sounds like you really already have everything under control. If they come at me at the end of the conversation like that, they would have said some things during the call that have already kind of alarmed me or alerted me to the fact that this is unlikely going to be an appointment.
And there's more quality in that appointment when you have that conversation.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
What's your definition of a qualified appointment, Bill?
If there's equity.
How much equity?
Man, it's going to depend with the value. I'd say at least 65%.
Right, so enough equity where it's below what our offer would be.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So equity below what our offer would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing the ARVs in my head so much these days. I just don't know. Like,
Yeah, there's no fixed.
there's no
not a
fixed
percentage.
Especially with our housing stock varies so much with the value added, and you know, so it kind of depends.
Do you have
That's
like
probably
a
another
quick
conversation.
go-to framework like that you calculate in your head, or have you just done this so many times that you just got an idea of?
What were you doing at the
Yeah.
beginning in particular, and before you didn't know as much?
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I mean, I should have something. I don't even have anything.
Would you use Zillow value back in the day when you were first doing this, or how would you use it? Okay.
I had rentals before I started, so I had a good idea what renovations cost. I was actually surprised to see that John gets his done substantially lower than I was getting mine done for years. And I don't, that's a good question. I really need to think about that.
But yeah, but for you guys, you know, the 40 to 60% of Zillow value, you know, ideally you would determine the actual renovated value and then do the 69% of it less the 70 or 80,000 in repairs. But you're not gonna have time to do that on the phone.
It'd be cool if we could sit down and figure out how to accelerate knowing that. You know what I mean? Just because the property's in great condition. Let's take even Division Avenue. That's in great condition.
Mm-hmm.
If it was let's just say we did get it deep, get a little deeper for a rehab, it wouldn't have been 40 to 50% of Zillow. It would have been a little higher, but because hers was in good condition, it was still worth the appointment because it could make a light rehab if we got it 20 grand cheaper. So it's kind of the data that we get during the phone call when we're surveying, about the condition of the property plays a very, very important role.
And what sort of things do people tell you when you know they're probably not motivated throughout the conversation, be it about the house condition, be it about the way they answer questions? What are signs that someone's not motivated and signs that they are motivated? Or maybe motivated? Someone's like, well, Phil, I sold for the right price.
For the males, it's going to be a lot of vibrato. I have this under control, testosterone over the phone.
And that's someone who's motivated or not motivated?
Not motivated.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. So that's a good indicator.
But they're not motivated.
Not motivated.
Okay, so they just seem like I got it all under control.
I got it all
Don't worry
under control.
about it.
I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 28 years. I've been doing this for 10 years. My house was worth this. The block up the house up the street was sold for that.
So they think they're very knowledgeable
Yes.
about property values.
Yes.
They almost like posture on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he's talking about, right? Like posturing,
yes.
like they're posturing, like, I know
Mm-hmm.
what's up here, I got it handled, I know the values.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like a know-it-all sort of.
Yeah. The woman will be, there's a variation of that for the woman as well. But there's also a variation of the woman that they kind of haven't figured out how to really diagnose that up front. They may seem motivated because they're quiet and laid back and graceful. And if they just hit me at a shell bomb at the end, they aren't. They really do have it under control. Not a shell bomb, but as I'm asking about the information for the property, they seem just so on top of things. And there's maybe a snippet of knowledge that they have. So I haven't really narrowed down the women that don't have the vibrato posturing part. But there's another, a woman has nurtured me to of knowing that she's not motivated.
Okay.
Like I didn't know it, but she gradually took me there. And I couldn't figure it out later,
Okay.
and where I would have been able to diagnose that earlier. Does that
They
make
let
sense?
They let you kind of do your
Yes.
own thing.
They make me feel like I'm winning. Oh, it's emotional.
Yeah.
I'm not getting excited on the phone, but in my mind I'm thinking, okay,
Yeah,
boom.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And what about house condition wise? How much does house condition tip you off if they're potentially motivated or not motivated, if at all?
Nothing done within the last 7 years. It was 10 years. Now I'm going 7.
7 years. So no renovations done within the last 7 years?
Nothing done within 7 years. Or
Okay.
if anything is done within that time frame, it's something dumb like a hot water heater or vanity set, or
Okay. So if someone says, 4 years ago we totally redid the kitchen, it's got granite and stainless, would
Highly
that be a
unlikely.
motivated or unmotivated person?
highly unlikely.
Right.
Unless
Highly
they're
unlikely.
probate, vacant, not collecting rent.
That's a good rule of thumb. Nothing, no updates in the last 7 years. And that's a question we ask, in the script, is when was the last time that like the kitchens and bathrooms were updated when you're kind of going into stuff? That's good. That's good. So equity, no updates done in the last 7 years. I think those are good rules of thumb to use. Equity, yeah.
What about if they ask you a question about like your process really about anything?
They ask me a question.
They ask you a question on it. So, how would it work when you came out? To see the house.
So if they agree to an appointment, I say, hey, I set the expectations for the appointment. Hey, these appointments typically take about 20
No,
to
just in terms of like diagnosing motivation. So if somebody's asking you questions on the phone about what you're going to do or how it will work or
how the
when they'll
process
get
works.
their offer,
Oh.
is that, how do you interpret that in terms of motivation?
I don't think I get questions about that. I don't. We may be preempting that. I can't remember getting questions about, like I haven't gotten that
Or
enough.
like, what about a question like, okay, so would you be, if you bought it, would you be paying off the water lien then? Like, or, a question about anything.
Oh, no, that's a buying signal. That's a whole
Exactly,
different.
okay.
That's a buying signal. Yeah, any kind of questions about what happens, I think, during the appointment can be credited to a buying signal or selling
Any
signal.
questions about
Yeah.
what's going to happen during the appointment would be a sign of motivation?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then when you're calling people, right? We talked about this a little bit a few months ago. I don't know if you thought more about it, but like, what percentage of people that end up being potentially viable, like prospects, potentially good candidates for us to buy? What percentage of them are initially sort of open and nice enough when you first talk to them, and what percentage are kind of more dicks? Kind of combative.
Damn, John, you ask these great questions.
Just ballpark, like.
Yeah. I gotta look at the number. I would say less than 5%,
Or
probably less than 3% are going to be people that we'd be engaged in and see. Yeah.
when the people that are potentially good candidates for us to buy the house.
Oh, good candidates versus.
Yeah, so I don't care about
Not
the people
motivation,
those- Yeah,
candidates.
So the ones that end up actually being decent candidates, what percentage of those people are like sort of nice and reasonably receptive and all that? It's like it's a kind of an easy call. Versus they're like challenging you, they're being combative, like what's your offer? Or
Oh,
they're being more.
okay.
You with me?
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I really got to spend time thinking about that, John. If I gave you a number to be 100% speculative.
Well, just give me a number that's speculative. I'm just curious what you would say.
Half.
Okay, so but like a big chunk are combative. They end up being good prospects.
No, because combative doesn't always
Or how would you term them?
Yeah. Because sometimes we can get combative people that have real motivation.
Right, so just because they're combative doesn't mean they're not
Yeah.
motivated. Right, and that's where a lot of other people are going to not be able to schedule the appointment, and that's why the laughing and me and my wife are looking for a house, and
Confusing,
and I'm being like, well, what do you want? And he's like, haha, I'd be sort of feel the same way if somebody was calling me up to come buy my house, and like you have to break through that hard shell to get to the warm, warm gooey middle part.
Absolutely. Did you say warm, gooey middle part?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but there's a big chunk that end up being decent prospects have that initial resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't let that doesn't indicate motivation one way or the other at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have to be good on the phone, bring your personality through. Izzy's been doing good on. I know Cody's been doing well too. I haven't heard you as much, but I'm sure you're doing well as well. And then Phil laughing and all that stuff.
Another thing we've been really testing and exploring, I think it's becoming effective, is with becoming a resource. So one of the things that we're telling the people is that, hey, you know what? If there's any indicator that they may be mildly motivated, or if we're getting resistance, I'd say, hey, you know what? Whether or not we buy the property or not, I'd love to be a resource. Feel free to reach out. and shoot me a call if you just want to, bounce ideas or run ideas past us. It sounds like you're in a great position. I love that you don't have to really sell this house, but you're considering it. Feel free to reach out if you just want to, just get some data on some market analysis, or just want to talk about a thought that you had. Just
When do you throw that in the call?
I've been testing it in different areas. I've been testing it in the condition of the property as an alternative to say, hey, so instead of saying, hey, this sounds like something we'd be interested in, so that I throw it in there at the conclusion. Sometimes I would say that during one of the follow-ups. So I may have called them 2 or 3 times when they're going to the dentist or the gym. Then I finally get a hold of them, and some other resistance may come out prior to us getting to the condition of the property, and I'll close out the conversation. So it's really a conversation closer that it may not be a good fit. So instead of saying it's not a good fit, I say, hey, I'd love to be a resource. Sounds like you have everything under control. Or I also use it if they have some other pending issues or challenges that they want to explore before they want to consider selling. Hey, I need to see if this loan modification is going to get approved or not. Hey, I need to fly back to the East Coast and meet with my mom because she has toenail cancer. Just dumb stuff. I don't know if there's such thing as toenail cancer, but it was the most creative I could get while I was in medicine. And so that's usually just a closer, just to sometimes, hey, I'd love to be a resource for you, let me know. Hey, my realtor says that, and my friend is an investor guy, and he says that. I said, oh, you know what? Oh, I totally understand. You're getting all this data from different places, and selling can be overwhelming, Mr. or Mrs. Seller. I mean, you have a full-time job, you have 2 kids, and you're commuting. You know what? Listen, there's a lot for you to think about. Feel free to give me a call back. I also have a license, a realtor's license. If you just want to get my opinion on something, just from both perspectives, feel free to give me a call. And it's really, really been keeping the doors open for a few folks that were on my hot list. They went to 1 month or 2 month nurtures, but it's definitely been keeping the engagement there, which I think is good.
What's your follow-up sequence, your cadence from initial touch to appointment where they fall off your radar?
Good question. So what's my follow-up regimen?
Right.
Okay. So after first touch, for cold calling, there's usually a sporadic or a circumstantial time where I need to follow up with them. That usually depends on
what time they give you. I got to talk to my wife.
Exactly.
I'm gonna do that at the end
When
of
they're
the
gonna
week,
be
so let's
available.
talk at the beginning of the following week.
So that's usually determined by the seller and their circumstance. After I talk to them, if it looks like they are qualified, but we're unable to set the appointment for some reason, but it's a pending circumstance, they go on my hot list and they probably get a call back at the beginning of the next week, or within about 5 or 6 days. That call says, hey, we spoke last week about your property, just thought I'd circle back and see kind of where you are with things. Or I hit them with, I was in the neighborhood, just wanted to check in and see if there's any value to us, discussing your property any further. So that's with that first touch to hot list, determining where they're gonna sit. If they're not qualified for the hot list, and the hot list get hit, everybody on my hot list is on a sporadic, specific timeline based on their circumstance. If they're not on my hot list, they're either in a 1 month nurture, 2 month nurture, 3 month nurture, or 6 month nurture. And that's everybody on our CRM is on a specific nurture schedule.
And how often? We got to wrap up in a minute. How often are you going negative? So yeah, Mr. Seller, it sounds like this. You've got a handle that you really aren't looking to sell. After all, no problem. I certainly appreciate talking to you. How often are you going negative and saying no for the prospect to try to get them to push back on that? And
Very
sell
often.
themselves?
Very often.
Okay.
So sometimes with the women that are graceful and tells me.
Okay, so you'll try to disqualify them and get them to come back towards you.
So sometimes I go negative with the text message follow-ups. They're on my hot list. Sometimes I've talked to them 2 or 3 weeks in a row, once a week.
And what would that sound like?
I may say something like, hey, listen, it looks like you decided to keep the property. I get it, great property. I'm going to go ahead and close your file. Give me a call back if you think there's anything else that we can help with. Or I say, hey, listen, it looks like you decided not to sell. I get it. It happens. Great property. Prices are going up. would you know anybody else that's considering selling? And so I just go right past them. All of a sudden, I'm not considering buying their property anymore.
Yeah.
And that was Yvette Williams, actually. That worked on Yvette Williams.
Okay.
Yvette Neal,
Interesting.
she responded to one of those.
Yeah, Yvette Williams she was a tough nut to crack.
Was it walnut or pistachio, or how would you characterize?
Pistachios aren't,
They're not hard to
sometimes,
crack.
yeah, sometimes they're pre-cracked.
Well, now they're deshelled these days.
She was,
Well, you know, hey man, if you're bougie enough to have, show movie.
yeah, so what was her, I'm interested, this is a woman that signed up last week. Very tough to kind of like get through to. I mean, she was nice enough, but it was a parents bought the property in 1940. We grew up in the house, owned it for a long time. Obviously, she inherited it. It was in pre-foreclosure. She had some embarrassment about that, and she had moved out of the house. I think was just very emotional in general, and also kind of embarrassed about the situation. So can you talk a little bit just quickly about like what projection she threw up? Because that was a good lead. You know, you said that you had like you went and you asked if
Oh,
she knew
yeah,
anybody
she,
else that was selling a property or what.
Yeah.
And what'd she say to that?
She said yes. She was one of those folks that floated on my hot list for about maybe for a month. And after the month on my hot list, I sent her a text. Obviously you figured out a way you decided not to sell and take care of the liens and stuff on your property. You know, I forgot there was some follow-up steps. So when I talked to her initially, I thought I knew with certainty that there was financial distress, but she was procrastinating with an appointment because she committed to an appointment and then didn't show up. So then I followed up maybe twice after that. The second time I followed up, I saw that she was on my liens list, so I went and pulled an image of what the lien was off of land records. I would get very familiar with land records, by the way. Get very familiar with land records, especially for DC, that can really, really put you in the head of the game and being able to navigate, know exactly what's going on with the property. I mean, it's not the same as diving into the court records, but it's a good way to just know, be able to speak confidently about what the status of it. Anyway, so I went and sent her a screenshot image of the water lien that was filed. It was only like $1,000. And she responded the next day, I think, or a few hours later, and we began talking about that. Then it came out that she was behind on the mortgage. I didn't know about that. Then she told me that I found out that she was unemployed. So it opened up the door of all these things, and we wound up talking.
And why did you spend the extra time to go search your property and send her a picture of the water lien? How'd you know to do that? Spend more time.
Our previous talks on the phone gave me a certainty that there was distressed opportunity.
Right. So that's where, you know, you have this pipeline you built from your initial sourcing, right? It was on his hot list of people. He knew that this was like a potentially a good prospect, so he took the extra time to look her up in land records, take a picture of the water lien and text it to her to try to get her to pop her head out.
And all of a sudden I became this guy with credibility for her. I also hit her with
So that mattered a lot to her, like that
It
was
did.
effective? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty powerful, right? I mean, you know, you took the time to do the research, you know, you found stuff that she may not even know is publicly available.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a lot of sort of credibility and expertise and stuff. I mean, I could see it potentially going and blowing it up potentially too, the person getting pissed or
Yeah,
something.
that's true. You got to.
But you know, but a lot of times going negative is the same thing. It's like that's kind of your big swing at it, and you're either gonna hit a home run or you're gonna strike out. You know, and go hit a home run. You know, in that case.
Oh, you know what? I forgot. They came after the whole resource. I gave her the resource. I can be a resource because she was overwhelmed and was still procrastinating. There was nothing I could do to push the appointment and get the appointment without being desperate. So I gave her the whole resource line. I can be a resource, and then I sent to her the water